Right, hello everybody, we're going to talk about Starfield today, Bethesda's new game due out next year. Now I'm an experienced modder using their games, for Oblivion, Fallout 3, lots of others all the way through to Skyrim. So I understand their edit quite well. I've used nearly every feature in it. And I know how they improve their editors over time and how it tends to work out for us modders in the end. Usually they'll introduce a new feature, it'll be heavily bugged, it might not even get fixed in that game. Sometimes, like in the nav mesh issue, it took 3 or 4 games for them to release, or for them to update it, and even then I had to make a video first. And my enemies, you shared that video and got Bethesda to listen. So we had managed to work together, me and the enemies, to get Bethesda to actually fix a bug that had been in 3 games at that point. Prior to that, I'd talked about it on the forums and been moderated for it, so I just gave up. So yeah, they're not good at listening to Bethesda. So the new features will probably be buggy. They probably won't be moddable for that reason. They may even make mods pointless, which is what the Navmesh bug did. Any kind of settlement or house just wasn't usable if you had an AI nearby. So it could be that serious. But new features will be buggy. It's almost certain. And it'll probably be one aspect of the editor. Right. The Navmesh system is working now, so I don't see them getting rid of that. There's dialogue. That requires an overhaul. That will probably be completely rewritten because they admit the Fallout 4 system is actually quite terrible. And it's why I never modded Fallout 4, because it is a terrible system. I looked at it and I thought, no, I'm not touching this with a barge pole, and I stayed away. So anyhow, I expect the dialogue system in Starfield will be updated, will be changed to be something more interesting. They've already said they're going to make it more of a roleplay game, so the dialogue aspects will have to be up to scratch. They said it's going to be deeper, more of a roleplay than previous games. That's not hard because their roleplay is getting lighter and lighter and lighter since Morrowind. Starfield being Skyrim being the weakest one from a roleplay point of view. So maybe the perks might go bye-byes in place of something else. But generally speaking, Bethesda's strengths are in their world space creation. It's also the most buggy area that has gone unfixed now since the days of Morrowind. So they'd have to overhaul that. That means a world space overhaul. And if they're doing a space feature, they can't be making 26 worlds the size of Skyrim. It's just, they just wouldn't have the time to do it. And if they did do it, then hats off to them. That would be something. But in reality, no. It's probably could be something like Obsidian's thing, Outer Limits is or something. I can't remember the name of it. I brought it. It wasn't as good as Fallout, to be honest. Lots of people wanted it to be better than Fallout, but it wasn't. It was just a normal average game, and it got rather repetitive. But anyhow, it'll probably be a lot like Obsidian's games, to be honest, with small settlements you can visit, do quests in, explore, probably the size of Far Harbour, I'd estimate. In which case you'd fly to a place like Far Harbour, probably surrounded by lava, probably like an Oblivion world space from Oblivion, or maybe Shivering Isles, that kind of thing, but it'd have a spaceport you land on, and you do missions there. That's what I'm expecting. Now, Bethesda's real strength is in their world spaces. It's one of the reasons why I think they're going to hands down beat Obsidian, at the space game, because Bethesda are better at it. Simple as that. Now, the dungeons that we see in Skyrim, all you have to do is replace the tile sets from stone to spaceship things, and you've got yourself spaceship dungeons. In this case, it won't be dungeons, it'll just be spaceships and space stations. They could, in theory, produce space stations and spaceships of any size they like. Maybe even complete with Mass Effect style, things, really massive affairs, even cities in space. And if you think about it, right, it says the default game would have to have a fair number of these to make it worth playing. I mean, if you're going to pay £50 or £60, they couldn't skimp on it, although some companies try. But once they've got these world spaces created, and I expect it will be a kind of outpost type thing, you land at a spaceport and it gets to explore. It'll either be a city or an open area or a mine or something like that in space. once they've got that done, they'll have the game sorted. But remember, they'll have to create all the assets from scratch. In the past, they've had games and all they've done is update the textures and stuff like that. Everything else has been very similar to what it was in the past, and they've been able to reuse it. They can't do that here. They have to remake things from scratch. So it's going to take a bit of time. That's probably one reason why it's took as long as it has, because there's an awful lot of assets, especially if every world has to be unique. Then every world will have to have its own set of assets, and that takes time. That's the big job that they'd be facing. Now, assuming they make 3 or 4 different worlds that are truly unique and everything else is the same, then DLCs is where they would be making their money. They'd be able to churn out DLCs for this till the cows come home, because every DLC could be a planet, a new tile set, loads of resources. And guess what us modders love? Lots of resources. So when they churn out this editor, you know, new editor for the thing, every DLC will just be like Christmas for mod makers. But I'm kind of hoping they don't do what they have done in the past and limit how many DLCs you can have supported by a mod, because it's a pain in the ass to change all the ini files and stuff like that. And some of the issues we see with Skyrim modding today is related to that. Is related to the DLCs and how things are packed and things like that. So I'm kind of hoping they just give up on the DLC limit and just say, right, modders can include any number of DLCs in their mods as they like, providing you own them, and go down that route, because that would be far better. And it'd also sell them more DLCs, to be honest. Because if you've got the DLC and you can use it and your mod requires it, just have the game say, this requires this DLC, problem solved, they sell DLCs, we get to use new resource packs. Perfect. Anyhow, if you think about it, every DLC could be a new planet, new world, new aliens, you know, new everything. They could literally just spend the next 2 or 3 years releasing world packs, and everybody would love it because it'd be a new place to travel to. Modders could make their own worlds. Everything from Star Wars to Star Trek could be represented in the Starfield world if they wanted it to be. Although, to be honest, there'd be copyright rules, Bethesda would clamp down on that, so probably not. But, you know, it would be an option for those people that didn't care about that kind of thing and just did it anyway. But you'd be able to make Nen. You could say, okay, then Skyrim is in the corner of this universe. You know, Skyrim Nen, where Skyrim is, and Cyrodiil. You know, there's all kinds of possibilities. Modders could go to town. You could have worlds, you know, full of Muppets, you know, providing you're willing to make the models that move. So yeah, it's got a lot of potential, and Bethesda's engine is got the capability of doing it. Now I know people say, oh yeah, it's out of date, it needs updated, but to be honest, it's one of the best engines I've seen for modding. If you like modding, then no, there isn't much they could do to improve it that wouldn't make modding more restrictive. So if you like mods, you must like their engine, and you just want the bugs to be fixed in it, and maybe some of the features updated to more modern features, and very little else, to be honest. Now if you assume they are going down the outpost route, you know, where you get to land on an outpost, explore a few things, maybe go to a space station or something like that, then you've got to wonder, how do you travel between the planets? Remember, Obsidian did this thing where you just selected and you were there, which was a bit of a cop-out. Bethesda will know that. They will know that travel between the stars has to be more interesting than that. And my guess is, right, this is one of their areas their editor doesn't really support, is vehicles that move. And my guess is one of the things they're trying to do, one of the aspects they're trying to work on right now, is to make vehicles move in a realistic way in their editor, including starships. So I think the reason why they've taken so long is that very aspect there, is to make it look good, make it look realistic, make it look convincing. And if they can, and you can feel like you're on a spaceship travelling between stars, I think they'll just nail it. I do. There's no reason why Starfield shouldn't be a massive success if Bethesda just do their normal style game with it, because they're very good at that kind of thing. So it's a question of, you've got Bethesda's average is way above everybody else when it comes to gameplay and hours played. So if they just do an average job on it, it will still be a success. But the potential here to do a great job to really break down some boundaries and to really push the limits, it's wide open. Bethesda just need to step through that door and claim the prize. But will they? That's the question. Will they? Right? Because they've got the engine, they've got the team, they've got the skills to do it. And the modders that will support them. So even if they did produce a groundbreaking game, modders would just make it better. It's a win-win. It's potentially their best game so far if they understand that and if they choose to grasp that prize. See you in the next one.